Graham Potter and his Brighton side might just dump Brendan Rodgers from his Leicester job this weekend, and I think it might be the right time. That's right, Brighton take on Leicester this weekend, and it brings up a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a little while, and that's the expectation of British managers in the Premier League, because certain managers get portrayed in a very positive and optimistic light, and others just get ignored. You know, you've got the likes of Lampard and Gerrard, and the media loves to romanticise about their astounding playing careers, and that's probably because they've dipped their toe in punditry at times, and they have that relationship there, and we're sort of optimistic that they'll live up to those standards in their managerial careers. All the while, we're just ignoring the best English manager going right now, and that's Graham Potter. So what does this all have to do with Brendan Rodgers? Well, first of all, he's a British manager. There's a connection. Second of all, his Leicester side are bottom of the Premier League table going into game week 6, which certainly is below standards for Leicester, especially due to the relative amount of success that they've had over recent years. But I would say that success is a bit of a strong word to describe Brendan Rodgers at Leicester. See, Brendan Rodgers is definitely, and quite worryingly so, a very short man, as we've seen on BT, but also he's quite a controversial figure. Not many people really know how to take him. He coached the under-18s and under-21s, I think, at Chelsea during Mourinho's tenure there, and there's stories of him sort of copying the way that Mourinho would manage his players, even down to some of the speeches he would give.
Obviously, he was sort of the understudy for Mourinho at Chelsea, so he's got so much mannerisms from him.
Right.
Which almost sometimes like he's trying to be Mourinho. But there's times like I knew he said certain things and I knew exactly where he'd got it from. Yeah. But I was the only one. So obviously I just went along with it and didn't say nothing. But
I'm not buying that. You said that to someone.
I might have dropped into someone. Yeah.
And also stories of him being quite a narcissist at times and attributing a lot of the success that his teams have had just solely down to him. But if we just look at the football on the pitch and the success on the pitch, you wouldn't be wrong in saying that he's a very capable manager. He almost got Liverpool their first Premier League, but just failed at the final hurdle. He then went to Scotland and ripped up the Scottish Premiership, but you definitely could say that Celtic sort of have an institution there, and it's not exactly a challenge to win the league over in Scotland with Celtic. And then he went to Leicester and has been flirting with European football his entire time there, but he has bottled Champions League football twice. And that's not something to overstate. Brendan Rodgers has bottled Champions League football twice in a row. He's bottled Champions League football with one of those seasons he was in the Champions League in the top 4 for 90% of the season and then just collapsed right at the end. And that's definitely a thorn in Brendan Rodgers and his sides over his career. They just can't seem to get over the line. But overall, if we look at his time at Leicester, and look, it might not be done just yet, but if we take it as a whole, I would argue he's sort of done everything he should have done at the club so far. He took over February 2019 from Claude Puel, meaning he didn't get the winter transfer window or the summer transfer window. In those two windows combined, they spent £103 million, which is no small fee. But we take a look at the players that were brought in, not under Brendan Rodgers, this was under Claude Puel. We've got the likes of James Maddison, Ricardo Pereira, Soyuncu, Danny Ward, Johnny Evans, Tielemans, Harvey Barnes. These players are, most of them, are permanent fixtures in this Leicester squad still. I would say that, first of all, Brendan Rodgers seems like he's brought the success that this team deserved and that Claude Puel was underachieving with. And the fact that maybe 5 of these players are still in the Leicester starting 11 now, I would argue, is this squad getting good reinvestment and good development? Is the board providing that? Well, let's have a look, because during his full 3 seasons and then the transfer window that's just been and gone, he's got 94 million, 53 million, 60 million, and then 15 million. So it could be argued that the board isn't investing enough squad into the Leicester side, considering the amount of success that Brendan Rodgers is bringing. If you're not 5, right, if you were born before 2015, then you would know that Leicester are a bottom half of the table club. They won the Premier League and it rocketed them to success that they probably never could have imagined, right? And Brendan Rodgers has flirted with European football constantly throughout his entire time at Leicester, which I think the players here deserve. To be only spending between 40 to 80 million per window. You can't get a decent midfielder nowadays for less than 50 million. And they've lost an amazing centre-back in Fofana. Who else have they lost? They've also lost someone else. Who else did they lose? They lost one of their best goalkeepers ever, arguably, in Kasper Schmeichel. So in a window where they're spending 15 million, that's it, and they're losing two of the most vital players in the squad, that's just not enough investment in a Leicester side to fulfill the expectations and the standards that Brendan Rodgers has brought to the football club. So we need to make a decision, first of all, on Brendan Rodgers. Do we judge him on his sort of tendency to bottle it in the big moments and not quite reach the success that's in arm's length away? Or do we just sort of say he hasn't been, there hasn't been enough investment in the club and he can't keep progressing this side? And look, there's nothing's given in the Premier League, but we can all sort of agree there's a standard top six. And other clubs that look to break into that, you can't really get complacent. You can't get too big for your boots, because if you want to keep upsetting the top six, unfortunately, it's not a good world we live in. You unfortunately need to be spending more than 70 million a window. You need to be doubling that if you want to continue competing, or else the gap between those two clubs is just going to grow and grow. And players like Maddison and Harvey Barnes probably will want to move on, and Tielemans definitely will want to move on. They'll want to leave because the club doesn't seem to be progressing. Then it just becomes the end of Brendan Rodgers' cycle. And to be honest with you, I think it's about time.